Welcome to Our World Plainly Seen, insights and commentary on the world around us with Dr. Frank Kaufmann.
Good morning. I'm putting together a very simple piece this morning. It's a call for an explicit journalistic mission and focus that I myself have not seen. If it's out there, let me know. But if not, I believe that it's a vital and important matter for serious investigative journalists who have integrity and who seek the truth. One of the things we notice, and it's a plain, indisputed fact, I think everyone across the political spectrum will acknowledge that President Biden is prevented from speaking spontaneously to the press to the extent possible by his handlers. In every solitary situation in which the president is tempted to respond to journalists' spontaneous questions, his handlers are extreme in their mad rush to interfere and to prevent the president from speaking. This is so universally acknowledged that that network, which is on the public record as having been committed to bring him into power at all costs, that anyone can check through the self-avowed commentary of people who are employed there at executive levels. That network, CNN, which openly admits that its mission it was and is to secure the Biden presidency, that network complained at the inaccessibility and the extreme aggression of Biden's handlers ever to respond to journalist questions. So this is the cornerstone of what I want to go through, just a couple of small points. Immediately after the election, immediately after January 20, an extensive Time magazine article appeared in which players identified themselves as having subverted the past election and saved America from the evils of what they believe is a populist Hitler-type person in the person of President Trump. They identified themselves, they identified their strategies, and they identified openly and explicitly those unconstitutional tracts and lines and integrations and cross-corporate activity that was designed to subvert the election process and secure the Biden presidency. They identify themselves, they identify how they managed to accomplish what they did, and they did so openly and unabashedly and proudly as saviors of the United States of America. We have two things. We have clear evidence that a group of people do not want the president speaking for himself other than in scripted ways. We have a group of people who self-identified as being willing to subvert the election integrity process in 2020 using COVID, and they explained it in great detail in the Time magazine article. And so what I want to know is to what extent these people who manipulated the election itself, according to their own confession, and in details on their strategies and on their implementation of their plan. Those people, are they still involved in running the United States government? They obviously were involved, according to their own confession and explanation. They were involved in running the election process. They infiltrated to voting. They worked with local governors, local state legislators, to change laws to unconstitutional procedures using COVID as a cover for this type of activity. They identified themselves, they identified their strategies, and they presented themselves as the saviors of America. Now we know that there is a group that is intensely dedicated to making sure that President Biden never speaks for himself, but only puts forward a particular agenda. Presently, the right side of the political spectrum and the right side media is intensely dedicated to a number of matters and concerns that they are desperately trying to respond to. One of them is that they are constantly challenging what's called President Biden's policies on policy levels, the great political commentary on the conservative side, like Hoover and Heritage, do great analysis of policy implementations of what are called quote-unquote Biden policies, and they challenge them and point out the great dangers to the health, wealth, stability of the United States based on such policies. That's good journalism, and it's necessary, and it's helpful, and should be it's educational. A lot of what they're covering includes the attack on the ideological bias that is being foisted all throughout education in America, from preschool all the way up through the highest levels of education in the most elite annals of education, like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Chicago, and so forth. It's now become almost cliche to hear the constant repetition of critical race theory. It is a particular ideological theory. It's very dangerous to anyone who adopts it, and it's very heinous to impose that on young people who should be studying geography, math, grammar, things like that. So there's a great fight against the ideological infiltration of education that is training American citizens to hate each other, to doubt the gender of their birth, and so forth. This is good work. There's a lot of reporting on that. There's also a great deal of reporting on immigration policy. There's a tremendous humanitarian crisis that is arising from the current handling of the southern border in the United States. People are dying, young women and children are being trafficked. It's a horrible situation. There's a great deal of writing there, which is important. There's a great deal of investigation into the past election. There's a lot of auditing and ballot counts in areas that were questionable, that, of course, big tech blocked from being allowed to be discussed. And so the voter integrity laws are being written about. Immigration, either policy or reality, is being written about. Ideological impact on education is being written about. But the reason why I made this podcast, and what I would like to ask of the great journalists out there, is what I believe should be a dominant obsession for investigative journalists is to identify and write extensively on exactly who is running the United States, particularly through the executive branch. Who are these people? Where do they come from? By what means do they access the executive branch? The country obviously is being run by someone. Although the president is not capable of reading the speeches written for him, that's its own issue. That's not at all why I'm speaking today. I saw a meme which said, why doesn't the president just do us all a favor and turn the teleprompters around so we can read for ourselves what it says? The fact that President Biden is not able to read cogently, this is a matter of a different discussion. It's not the matter that I'm concerned about. The matter that I'm concerned about is who is running the United States of America. I read a lot of great investigative journalism. I read a lot of truth-seeking journalists and great analysts. But I have not come across that side of the media, of course it would be the conservative side, that is trying to find out who these people are. Where are they? Who are they? What are they associated with? Where do they come from? What are their backgrounds? How are they funded? And especially, how do they get access to the executive branch of the United States government? Already a group self-identified. There's a lot of names in that article. What I'm interested in knowing is who is continuing the mission that was undertaken and confessed in the Time magazine article that will have so-called President Biden, the mouthpiece of a huge rack of highly destructive policy directions, even though he's incapable of articulating them, even when they're written out. But more importantly is who is writing them. That needs to be exposed, and the people who already admitted to secretly taking over the election, now it should be equally known and constantly written about who continues the mission that was undertaken when the decision was made to subvert the 2020 elections. So that's a small request of mine. The border, the education, the election integrity, great writing, great analysis, but also there should or begin to be exposed who's running the United States of America. I beg these great journalists and great analysts out there to begin to put this in front of the American people. Thank you very much for listening.